Hello, welcome. This is the Princeton Cloud Analytics Group, and we are a community of residents of Princeton, New Jersey, or the town surrounding, and we have a passion for cloud computing. So we gather in the library once a month, and we discuss topics relating to cloud computing and analytics. And within the community, we have speakers who specialize in certain areas and who are willing to share, and we invite them to speak. So for today, we are inviting Tony. He is a Amazon Cloud Certified Architect. In addition to that, he is the Vice President of a company which specializes in cloud computing. So he will talk more about his company. You can give a brief background on what your company is. And then he's going to share some of his findings about what his experience has been with the cloud migration. So our focus is cloud migration, that's one of it. Our focus is also analytics in the cloud. So every month, depending upon what the speakers want and who's willing to spend what topic, we will always have sessions relating to implementation of cloud technology. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Tony, and he'll take it up. He'll explain about his company, and then he'll explain his experience with the cloud.
Thank you very much, Omar, and welcome everyone. My name is Tony, and the session today that we're going to talk about is about cloud migration. So, I've been involved, and my company has been involved in cloud migrations. Helping our customers to migrate to the cloud. So, firstly, just going to talk about the perhaps the obvious. What are the drivers for cloud migration? So I guess maybe just to pat ourselves on the back more than anything else. And then what's on the cloud, and that particular part of the presentation is going to talk about some of the essential technologies, the way they exist on the cloud as of today, as well as some of the emerging new technologies that as cloud professionals or as cloud enthusiasts, we must know, and always good to be tracking and following what's coming up on the horizon, and then also share with you some of the strategies that we have learned, from our customers, what works and what does not work, some of the basically empirical knowledge that we have acquired in the field, and a little bit about who we are, a brief intro about me and my company. So the company is the CloudNonstop. So we've been around for a while, although we are relatively new here in the US. I'm one of the co-founders of the company here in the US. We started a little about a year ago. Worldwide, we are more than 1,200 employees, and we have done plenty of cloud deployments with customers big and small. And we have our consultants certified on AWS, Azure. We have advanced partnership levels with the major, what are known as the hyperscale cloud providers. So we have partnership with those, and as well as we have a network operations center 24/7 that we make available to our customers to monitor their cloud deployment and provide a support, remediation, and advisory services. So anyway, so that's a brief intro about who we are and what we do. Let's get into the presentation and talk about the drivers for cloud migration. So not surprisingly, so these are some of the findings from a market survey that was done recently by surveying, I think, about 1,000 enterprises, big and small. So not surprisingly, the biggest motivator happens to be cost. Because obviously, you are shifting the capital expenditure to operational expenditure. So the initial outlay required for setting up the infrastructure is it could be fractional of what you would be spending otherwise. Even as a simple example of simply migrating your servers as is from on-prem to the cloud, instantly you can be expecting 30 to 40% cost savings. So it's as simple. It can be as simple as that. So, but beyond that, some of the other surprising findings that we have found, this is what the customers have told us is security and compliance. I don't know about you, but it does surprise me a little bit because, recently and over the years, there have been paranoia surrounding security and compliance, and probably more about security on the cloud. But the fact remains that today, when you look at the assertions being made by AWS and Azure and cloud, so they are meeting up with all of the security and compliance requirements, probably more than what individual enterprises they could be doing on their own. So people are feeling more and more secure, in terms of hosting their data in the cloud. And then in addition to that, other features which are perhaps very unsurprising, like high availability, reliability, and so on and so forth. In terms of migration plans, and these are again industry trends, you will notice that the blue bars are the ones which are referred to what are the plans for the companies today, a year, and 2 years from now in terms of cloud migration. So that one is sloping up, so which is again not very surprising, right? So, but it also points to the fact that it's still largely an untapped market. So it has only just begun. Like as of today, 28% of the companies, they have cloud migration plans. So there's a huge proportion of the companies who are still waiting or thinking in terms of migrating to the cloud. And so that's where there's business to be made, by us cloud practicing professionals to be working with those companies and helping them get onto the cloud. Some of the other trends, the one in the gray, which is bare metal. So the prevalence of the bare metal, which is again not surprising, that's going down. And you also notice the virtual machines. So they have been very hot, over the years, right? From bare metal to virtualization. So even that trend is now, on the down ramp, giving way to cloud, obviously. There is a slight uptake you will notice in the yellow bar, which point towards a private cloud. Although I think that's a separate topic of discussion, private cloud versus public cloud. There is some adoption of the private clouds going on as well, but it is not as pervasive as the public cloud. So that's the trend that we're seeing in the market at this point of time. Not to say that cloud migrations they can be done just like that. It does have its own challenges, and this is where companies like us we help our customers to successfully migrate them to the cloud. So minimizing the downtime, right? So you have your production system running on-prem or in a data center, and then you need to cut over to the cloud. So how are you going to do that with minimizing the downtime and without any data loss? So that's important. Staying within budget, because cloud migrations can be fairly extensive, and especially if you're thinking in terms of migrating a data center with thousands of nodes in it, and you need to be migrating all of that to the cloud. So that does require a fair amount of project management expertise and careful planning, and staying within budget. So that's very important as part of that particular exercise. Performance impact on production, making sure that you have done the capacity planning right, and you have provisioned enough servers. You have utilizing cloud auto scaling capabilities the way they should be done to support your production environment, and so on and so forth. So just a quick overview of those challenges. In terms of what's on the cloud, so this is where let's talk about some of the technologies, the way they exist on the cloud, and a lot of this I would expect you to be quite familiar with already, but nonetheless, let's just have a quick recap. So probably you might have seen this particular graphic that differentiates how does on-prem differ from infrastructure as a service and platform as a service and software as a service. The figure is self-explanatory, as you can tell. And the onus of management is moving from the customer to the vendor. So that's what the various differences are between. And I'm sure you've heard this term mentioned a lot. What's infrastructure as a service, and I think probably that's the part that we are mostly familiar with, because infrastructure as a service is actually the more popular manifestation of cloud computing. And initially, when companies, when they're looking to adopt cloud, that's what they really care for more than anything else. And then gradually, they continue to adopt platform as a service Then there's also another category here that I haven't mentioned called function as a service. So we're going to talk about that as well. So some examples of infrastructure as a service. So like Omar mentioned, so I'm myself Amazon certified. So that's where my knowledge mostly is. But not to mention that Azure and Google Cloud Platform and IBM, so they also have their own equivalents. So on Amazon, for example, in infrastructure parts, you can be running the EC2 instances, elastic cloud compute as they call it. On the storage front, they have block storage and they have object storage options that are also available. On the networking side, you can configure your own network and firewall and construct your own boundaries in the public cloud. So that contains your own resources within it as a virtual private cloud. And infrastructure as a service. So what are the services that you get from the vendor? So that includes hosting of all the equipment and monitoring of all the activities and centrally logging all the activities so you can examine the spoils and see what's going on. Making sure that security and access control, authentication, authorization, all of those options are available to you, as well as ongoing maintenance of the hardware and the software. So that's what you get out of IaaS. Platform as a service is a greater evolution of cloud computing, you could say. And,
excuse me, Tony. I have a question.
Yeah.
So could you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
So, how much is done by the cloud vendor, and how much is done by the service provider like your company? Could you elaborate on that and on each of the type? For example, if you take infrastructure as a service, what will Amazon or Microsoft or Google offer, and what will be the service provider like you offer?
Yeah, that's a good question. And if we go back one more slide here, so if you're talking of infrastructure as a service, so everything which is in gray here is being completely managed by Amazon, right? And this is the part where you manage. So that means that the customer is responsible for their management on an ongoing basis. For example, so if you set up your EC2 instances or a cluster of EC2 servers, the operating system is the customer's responsibility. So if you're running Linux, so the patching of Linux on an ongoing basis is the customer's responsibility. Amazon is not going to touch it for you. And likewise, in case you're running SQL Server or any data warehouse on your own, within those EC2 instances, so they need to be maintained, they need to be upgraded, they need to be backed up. So all of that work needs to be done by the customer. And if the customer engages, managed service providers like us, so that's where we can help them, with ongoing monitoring and maintenance of all of those components. Now things are a little different when it comes to platform as a service because so this is where the customer needs to be worrying only about the applications and the data. So for example, if you're running database servers or you're running data warehouses, using the cloud platform provided by Microsoft or Azure, so you need not worry about backing it up. You need not even worry about replication and clustering. All of those things, they're all taken care of by the cloud provider for you. So you need to be only focusing on the data that you need to provide, and working with the data and as well as any applications that are running on top of you. So in those kind of scenarios, managed service providers like us will be helping the customers in terms of ongoing monitoring of those services, and any other key metrics that might be important to the business on an ongoing basis. So, and of course, software as a service is fully managed. So if you're running something like Salesforce.com or Workday as your HR system, so it's a fully managed service, and then the vendor of Salesforce.com or the company Workday, so they can take care of everything for you. So then you don't need companies like us to be helping you in those regards.
So when you're talking about the infrastructure part over there, you were saying that there's a part that you can actually help and manage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's only management, or do you actually, you're helping managing their infrastructure,
in the cloud.
In cloud,
Yeah.
exactly. So you are not That's your management part. There's no other physically, you're not managing anything, hosting anything, or you don't support any hardware or anything like that.
We're not. I mean, not in that particular scenario. I mean, as a business, we also help manage customers' infrastructure, on-prem. That's our legacy. That's like, how we evolved.
Right.
Before, we came to cloud, and now everyone wants to be in the cloud. So yeah, so right now, as of today, all the newer customers that we are acquiring, so we would be essentially monitoring their cloud infrastructure, and then we also provide, the typical IT functions. So for example, if there is any slowdown that might be happening on any one of their applications, so who are you going to call, right? So we assume that responsibility, and we provide SLAs in terms of responsiveness, remediation, and fixing any problems as and when they might be happening. So it's kind of like you're outsourcing your infrastructure to Amazon,
Right.
and you're outsourcing your
Sure.
IT operation to
Yeah.
us.
Right.
So it's a fully outsourced operations
Right.
for running your IT stack. So that as a business you can be focusing on banking or insurance or anything else. That's your core business. So that's the premises basically.
Okay.
As compared to early on, you have to buy the hardware, then you have to upgrade it, you have to swap it in, swap it out, then you have to hire a team of IT professionals who maintain it for you. So there's a lot of work, which may not be your core competency, but out of necessity, you have to do it on your own. So, but now, there's a, arguably a better option, so you don't have to do it yourself.
Yeah, to add to Tony's, sorry, my name is Karthik, I'm leaving. To add to Tony's, right? So usually the managed services, what they do is, for, let's say you want to have an application which is 24 hours, you want to be like, let's say, Best Buy, right? So that's gonna be very busy on Labor Day, right? So, not Labor Day, on Thanksgiving, right? So you want to build an application which is more auto-scale.
Right.
And more load balanced, right? So those kind of things will be done by companies like.
Yeah, so that we work with the customer and, we will provision the infrastructure and we will construct the kind of, infrastructure using the cloud resources to support their business. And so the other thing is, just keeping up with the cloud computing these days, it's a full-time job. And when I say full-time job, I really mean it's a full-time job. I actually know companies. I was talking to someone at Expedia the other day, and they told me, they actually have hired engineers who are just tracking, everything that goes on in AWS. They are an AWS customer. Because every day there are new announcements coming out, and then you want to make sure you're not getting left behind, because cloud is all about getting competitive edge in your business. So I mean, either you can do it on your own, right? Which could be again taking you away from your core business, or you can be working with a managed service provider. So that's a job, So they'll make sure that they're on top of everything, and then they will advise you, hey, by the way, here's a new feature, right? That came out. And recently I was tuned into AWS reInvent event that happened a couple of weeks ago.
Were you there?
No, I couldn't, but I was listening to the live stream by the CEO. You were there? Yeah, it must have been amazing, I'm sure. They have about 45,000 people, they show up in Vegas, and I shouldn't ask you what you did there, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
I'm not sure he was going to tell you.
Right, because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So, but yeah, so that's the big value add of working with a managed service provider.
Just to not interrupt you guys, what I've done is, even Omar knows, I think we've been sharing some chat, but I've actually started another AWS user group at Princeton.
Okay.
So I'm the leader for that group. So
Yeah.
what I'm thinking is, I'm actually in the process of inviting some of my customers, AWS customers. I run an AWS company, I'm an AWS specialty company as well. So I'm planning to invite some of my customers locally here to come and speak about their use case for 45 minutes or so. So at least that gives you, so I think.
Good exposure.
Yeah, it's just an exposure, nothing.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no, it is just as a community service. we would like
But
to-
it's a good idea. Yeah, always good to learn from each other.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So okay, right. So back to the presentation. So platform as a service. So this is where, and we did talk about that briefly. We talk in terms of the cloud provider is now giving you options for running your database server. So you don't have to install and configure and maintain your own Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL, you name it. So they have made those available to you. For example, Amazon has Aurora, which is I think their version of MySQL database, and they say it's similar to MySQL, only better. So they have made some enhancements to it. And DynamoDB is their NoSQL database option that's also available. For data warehousing, they have Redshift. So they're fully managed services, right? So you just operate, you don't have to worry about backups or upgrading, nothing. And likewise, for big data frameworks, so how many of you have been involved in big data setup things? Like setting up Hadoop clusters and installing software on it and so on and so forth. Very intensive and very complicated, right? So either you can do it on your own or you can use Amazon EMR. So this is their Elastic Map Reduce service that does all of those things for you. So you don't have to be spinning your wheels or just getting it going. So a lot easier to be using a big data framework on the cloud. And there are several other options in the cloud for that, by the way. And likewise for the application deployment framework, where you have to be maintaining the executables and the runtime and the servers and so on and so forth. So Amazon provides something called Elastic Beanstalk. So it provisions the entire runtime environment for you. So if you want to run a Java or a web app or a .NET, so they take care of everything for you. So all the HADR clustering, patching, maintenance of the operating system, so none of that you need to worry about. So that's the beauty of platform as a service. Function as a service is something relatively new as in it's been around for about a couple of years, and this is one of the newer trends, up and coming trends in the market. And right now, this is the highest level of abstraction in cloud computing. I'm sure you would have heard of terms like serverless computing. Omar was referring to that early on today. And so how is it different? Because usually when you talk about your computing stack, so you will have a front end, and then you will have a server, then you will have something running on the server, and then you'll have a database, right? So typically a 3-tier architecture, and then you have to maintain the server. Right? You have to install the server, maintain it, upgrade it, and so on and so forth. And you have to have it running, you have to have it up and running all the time. Function as a service is different. So these are simply some functions. Amazon provides Lambda functions, so that's what they call it. But likewise, Microsoft, they have Azure functions, Google has Google Cloud functions, IBM also has something similar to that. So the beauty of the functions is they're just sitting out there on the cloud. And when you're not using them, you're not paying for them. As compared to platform as a service or infrastructure as a service, where once you provision something for you, you need to have it up and running all the time, right? Sure, you can bring it down, but if you bring it down, you cannot use it. Whereas in function as a service, so you simply build your functions and then you deploy them on the cloud. And actually, I shouldn't say deploy them because you have to do nothing. You simply upload your code, and the code can be in Java, Python, .NET, Node.js, a variety of runtimes they are supported, and then the cloud provider will deploy it for you, right? Somewhere in the cloud, where it is, don't worry about it. It will be auto scaling. So what it means is, as the requests, their frequency grows, it will automatically instantiate multiple instances of those functions and grow and shrink the pool automatically for you. It's magic. And then and then you're only paying for the function when you use it, right? So very cost effective, and hassle free, right? You don't really have to be worrying about ongoing maintenance, for those. So basically it's and they are event driven. So the function they respond to an event. And you define your event. An event could be an image file that has been uploaded to one of the S3 buckets. Then your function is looking at it, and and as soon as the image is uploaded, it needs to do some rendering or convert into a different format or whatever the function is supposed to be doing. It will kick in and take care of that, and then you will be only paying for that particular compute time. So that's pretty cool, and that's definitely one of the emerging trends. in the market, and more companies they want to and they are moving in that direction. So if you have skills in Lambda functions, so you will be in demand in the market right now. So all of that also leads towards what the companies aspire for is building and deploying cloud native applications. And this is again something relatively new in the market, in the sense that presently most of the computing is done using your more traditional 3-tier application, right? So you have your Java, or you have your .NET, or you have your web apps, and then you have your databases, and then you have your servers, and so on and so forth. And a lot of those, they are monolithic applications. So the newer trend is to break down the application into smaller functions. It's kind of similar to function as a service, right? Think of your applications as smaller functions, or microservices is a more general term for breaking down the functionality of the application into smaller chunks. So I'm sure you would have heard a lot about microservices term being mentioned these days. It's becoming very popular. And then also, when it comes to deploying those microservices, they get deployed as containers. And within that, Docker container is the more popular technology in the market right now. So something that you should be familiar with. And then likewise, when it comes to methodology, continuous delivery is becoming more and more popular. And what it means is, for those of us who've been around for a long time, so there is the waterfall, project management methodology, and then we all moved over to agile, or trying to move to agile project management technology. And some companies that do it more successfully than the others. And then all of that is leading towards what's known as continuous delivery, which basically means it makes it a lot easier for deploying the application in production on an ongoing basis. So, and this is again, what the companies they aspire for, but different companies they're at different levels of getting to that particular stage.
So, not to distract you from this,
Yeah.
but can you give an example over here what classifies? I mean, we all know what services are, but
Right.
can you give an example, a small example where something would be called microservice versus?
Sure, yeah, I've got a slide coming
Okay,
up
all
just for that. Yep. So, and likewise, so I just wanted to highlight these, trends here because this is where the market is, or getting there now. So, microservices, containers, and then continuous delivery is gaining in popularity, as is DevOps, which is, again, automating the entire software development and delivery pipeline. And to the extent that if the ultimate DevOps nirvana will be that you make a code change, you check it in, and then automatically it kicks off automated testing, and then if it passes the automated test, automatically it gets deployed onto the production server, and ta-da, it's been published, right? So if you can get to that stage of full automation of software delivery and deployment, then you can claim to be following the DevOps principles. Easier said than done. And as part of our company, we also provide consultancy around DevOps automation. So that's another parallel consulting services that we do provide, and a separate topic of discussion on its own. So and likewise, another trend is how in large enterprises, so you might have development groups in different parts of the world, and then there's always the paranoia of what if the development group in Russia is using Java? Oh my God, we are using .NET here. What do we do now, right? Or they're using different IDE, or they're using different database server. So is that a good thing, or is that a bad thing? Like in traditional enterprise computing, you're always trying to harmonize the development and the deployment environment. Guess what? Now in a cloud native applications, and especially when you are adopting a microservices architecture, the tide is turning. So at AWS reInvent, for example, so Amazon they mentioned that they have about 30 different programming languages and development environments that are being used within the company, and they are perfectly okay with it. They're not even trying to make it all uniform so that everyone uses the same development environment. They're not at all concerned. In fact,